Good afternoon, everyone. We'll call the meeting to order. If you could join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. All right, Jake, if you could call the roll, please.
Mr. Johnson? Present. Mr. Dawson? Present. Ms. King?
Present.
Mr. Seabolt?
Present.
Ms. Gunchin?
Present.
5 members are present. We have a quorum.
Thank you. All right, so we will move along to approval of the September 12th meeting minutes. Is there a motion?
So moved. I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All right, all in favor, please indicate aye.
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 I abstain.
Thank you. All right, Jake, the first appeal, please.
The first appeal to be heard today is appeal number 12-297 by Allison Love for Were Rabbit LLC concerning property located at 250 East 35th Street, located in an R1A single-family residential zoning district. The appellant is requesting approval of a special exception use for a short-term rental as per section 204.11 of the City of Erie zoning ordinance. Per section 508.10 of the ordinance, all special exception requests shall be heard by the City of Erie zoning hearing board. Ms. Love is here to present.
Just a note, Jake, was no court reporter on for today?
No, they're not present.
Okay. Is the meeting being recorded?
It should be being recorded. I can double check that.
Would you please?
One moment.
It is? Okay.
Ms. Love, will have you come forward, please. If you could state your name and home address.
My name is Allison Love. My home address is 11526 64th Street East in Parrish, Florida, 34219.
Ms. Love, would you do me a favor and raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth during your testimony today?
I so swear.
Thank you.
So I'm not quite sure if you saw, I know you saw the form of my application and you're aware of what I'm doing. I don't know if you saw my rambling story. A few years ago, my husband and I decided to work on real estate investment as part of, well, mostly my retirement plan. I have been a stay-at-home mom for my 4 now all grown and adult children for many years. And so looking at something that I enjoy doing, and I enjoy bringing homes back to life. And my husband was tired of me re-bringing our home back to life over and over and over again. So after speaking with some friends, we found out about Erie and what a lovely town it is. And the first trip I made up here, I brought my son with me, and he was a sophomore at the time. And we both fell in love with Erie. He fell in love with it so much that he has now moved up here. He got up here as soon as he turned 18, and he is so happy to be a resident and working and thriving. And so our journey has started thus in being investors in Erie, but also my husband won't move up here because it snows, but and he spent too many years in the snow. But I really, love spending time up here. So 250 East 35th Street. We came upon this property and purchased it in May. It needed a lot of deferred maintenance taken care of. And one thing that we have really enjoyed about this property is its proximity to the park. It's there right at the foot of the hill with the elementary school, and it's right across the street from the Veterans Hospital. The school is across the street from the Veterans Hospital. After speaking to many investors here in Erie, everyone kind of downplayed this as a place for a short-term rental because they said, well, it's not near Presque Isle. Well, as beautiful as Presque Isle is, and I make a trip out there every time I'm in town, that is not the only reason people come to Erie. And as the over-anxious parent of college age and recently graduated college students, you have several universities here in Erie. Mercyhurst is just down the street from this. And my daughter came up here for a skating competition at Mercyhurst last year, and her whole team was up here. And I kept thinking, I wish I had a place to host the team. They're all from Florida, they're far from home, not all parents can make it up. And I kept thinking, what about all the other families who come in to celebrate their children and their accomplishments? What about all the families who want to spend time out on Presque Isle but don't want to be on the beach itself? They want to go to all the other things that Erie has to offer. What about people who are here short-term interviewing at LECOM? What about, there's so many people who need to come to Erie and who want to come to Erie, and the vacation and beach homes and those things aren't always the right answer. And this location, it just felt perfect. So next door, and I've gotten to know, through the course of purchasing the home, I've gotten to know the neighbors briefly. We have college students living on one side, and we have a multi-generational family living on the other. We are trying to keep it quiet and nice. My son was so happy to come out and hand out Halloween candy on Halloween. And it has been a beautiful, beautiful neighborhood, and we want to preserve that. We want to help people who are coming to Erie have a place that feels like home, where we're not doing loud parties, but it gives an opportunity to showcase what Erie is, which is a wonderful family community, and help promote the growth that Erie has going on right now. Questions?
So for the record, your application indicates a maximum of 5 bedrooms.
That is correct. It has 3 bedrooms upstairs, 1 bedroom downstairs. It has what we are going to be using as an office, but it could be a bedroom also because it does have a closet, and it has windows. It also has an exterior door to the back porch.
Okay, and you have the appropriate egress from the upstairs bedrooms for fire safety?
Yes.
Okay. Also have 3 off-street parking spots?
Yes. Also a 1-car garage.
Okay.
So 3 plus the garage, or?
Yes. 3. It is 60 feet or 63 feet from the garage to the street.
You have to subtract a bit because you can't park on the sidewalk.
Oh, okay. Okay. So 2 plus. Yes.
And who will be your 24-hour contact person?
My son.
Your son? Okay.
We do have a property manager that we use for other properties here. If we need to, we will hire them to manage this property as needed.
Okay.
So what's your total guest count then, potential, you're looking to have approval for?
No more than 10. We're looking at 8 to 10 guests.
Could you talk to us a little bit about the screen planting requirement?
Oh, the screen planting requirement. So in the backyard, it is, so behind the garage, there was a section of bare fence. We had to clear out a tree because it was just laying on top of the garage. We have we have had a 6-foot privacy fence put in on that section. Behind the house, between the house and the back and us, there was already a 6-foot privacy fence and hedges and trees. And on the other side, there was already a whole bunch of fir trees going down. There's a fence, but there's also several large fir trees going down the other side. Yeah, yeah, right there behind the telephone pole, there's a whole bunch of fir trees lining that side, and they are 12 feet tall, or bushes. No.
So the car that we're seeing in the image belongs to that property?
The car in the image,
Goes, that driveway, the driveway's on the right of the home?
the driveway, yes, the driveway
Okay.
belongs to that property.
Okay.
The grass on that side, so the driveway is the boundary of the property, though. The grass belongs to the neighboring house.
Okay. So one minor issue with the screen planting is we're not seeing anything between the driveway and the neighbor to the right. And to be consistent with what we have ruled in the past relative to short-term rentals. Feel free to chime in, members. Jake?
Just by way of clarification on the screening, we looked at the screening issue. What we're determining is adequate and appropriate screening would be the outdoor living space in the rear yard area. It's, in looking at most of the properties in the city, it's pretty difficult to ask that a screen be placed between houses. So what our determination is, it's not specifically identified in the ordinance, but that's what our determination has been, is that as long as the outdoor living area in the rear and side yard areas is covered, which it is in this case, that those driveway areas between the houses, screening is not going to be required.
What about the front yard?
It's, again, with a lack of clarity, what we've determined is it's really the rear yard area where potentially there would be, some outdoor activity. That I think that was the intent of council, to kind of make sure that people had some privacy in their backyards. That's what the zoning office has determined.
Jake, how are we determining parking? Are we saying that's a dwelling unit?
Correct.
Or are the bedrooms the dwelling unit? So if there's 3 bedrooms, you need 3 spaces.
No, the parking requirement for dwellings is 1 per dwelling unit. The short-term rental ordinance clearly states that the occupancy of the short-term rental needs to be in compliance with the occupancy limit for the zoning district. It's a single-family dwelling. The expectation is that no more than a single family would be staying there at any one time. There's no limit on the size of a family. If a nuclear family could be large, and that's where the building code will dictate the maximum number of occupants to be able to stay in the building.
So what's the square footage on this property?
Square footage is approximately 1,600 square feet.
And do you know the square footage of the bedrooms?
I do not have that with me. However, each of them can easily hold a queen-size bed.
And currently you don't have any outdoor lighting or outdoor speaker system?
No. I'm not cool like that.
Any other questions from the board?
Just clarification. Jake, is Erie still having compliance for more than 3 unrelated people at any time?
Correct.
No.
Yeah, that's under the definition of family. Mhm.
Just one clarification.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for your time.
Is there anyone else to speak in favor of this request? Anyone to speak in favor? Anyone to speak in favor? Okay. Is there anyone here today opposed to this request? Anybody to speak in opposition? Anyone to speak in opposition? Hearing none? Okay. I think we'll have a very brief executive session and we will be back. Thanks. Thank you, everyone, for your patience. All right, relative to Appeal 12297 by Ware Rabbit, is there a motion?
I'd like to make a motion that we table this for further discussion.
Okay. Second? I'll second. All right. Jacob, would you call the roll, please?
So we have a motion and a second to table the appeal. Mr. Johnson, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Dawson?
Yes.
Ms. King?
Yes.
Mr. Sebald?
Yes.
Ms. Guntran?
Yes.
We have a vote of 5-0 to table the appeal.
Thank you.
Do we want to give her any explanation or no?
Not right now. If you could move on to the next item of business, please.
Yes. Under old business, we have a review of prior appeal 12241 by PE Real Estate Holdings LLC concerning property located at 824 and 828 West 2nd Street in a WR zoning district. The appellant seeking a dimensional variance to construct a 9-unit, 3-story, multiple-family dwelling. Per section 20511 of the city zoning ordinance, the required front yard setback must be the average depth of the existing structures located between two intersecting streets, plus or minus 5 feet. The front yard setback average is 7 feet, and a front yard setback of 84.6 feet is proposed.
So by way of introduction and explanation, this is an appeal that the initial hearing was held on December 8th of 2020. The zoning hearing board made a determination at that point in time, and one of the adjacent property owners, who I'll just refer to as the objector, appealed that matter to the Erie County Court of Common Pleas. Judge Ridge ordered that additional testimony be taken in the matter and scheduled a hearing for the zoning, with the zoning hearing board and city council scheduled a joint hearing to take that additional testimony on the matter. After that additional testimony was taken, there was no further action by this board. The appeal in front of Judge Ridge continued. Judge Ridge eventually ruled in favor of affirming the zoning hearing board. The objector at that point in time took the matter to the Pennsylvania Commonwealth Court. The Pennsylvania Commonwealth Court decided that the matter should have, that this board should have taken action after that second hearing, after that second set of testimony was taken. And because of that, because no action was taken, at that point in time, the matter was directed to Judge Ridge, remanded to Judge Ridge, with instructions that it be remanded back to the zoning hearing board, and in a companion case that it be remanded back to city council. This board has before it the testimony that was taken in December of 2020, the testimony that was taken in July of 2021, and all of the relevant exhibits. Factually, the record is closed at this point in time. We extended an invitation to the developer and to the property owner, as well as to the objector and her counsel, to come here today to present oral argument. So what you're going to hear now is not testimony, it is not evidence, it is argument. It is the objector's counsel taking the opportunity to apply in their thought the law to the facts of this situation and argue why the variance should not be granted. We did not receive any indication from either the developer or from the property owner that they wished to participate and present argument today. So as far as I know here, we're just going to hear from the objector's counsel. With that, I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Greenfield. Incidentally, I'm not going to swear Mr. Greenfield in because he is not testifying, and on top of that, he's an officer of the court and therefore always under oath.
Thank you, Mr. Martinucci, for the summary, which was terrific, and I think it lets the board know where we are in this case. My name is Jim Greenfield. I'm an attorney representing Jan Ferguson, who owns property at 107 Plum Street, which is immediately contiguous to the subject property, and in fact, it's the rear of her property that borders on the property at 824 to 828 West 2nd. As you heard, the variance that's being requested here is not of the de minimis or even a modest variety. It's a radical variance. In fact, if they're permitted to build no more than 12 feet from the street on their front yard setback, and they're asking for 84.6 feet, that's a variance of 600%, which is extraordinary. And I think the record very clearly indicates that they want this variance for one reason, and that, according to the testimony of Phil Jesaway, who is the principal of the developer applicant, that is because he wants to make sure that all of his units get premium views of the bay from the edge of the bluff. If they were to build in compliance with code, the units on the second and third floors of the building with balconies at the rear would already have bay views. So this is really about getting bay views for the first floor. And the consequences of that, unfortunately, is that this application, if granted, would cut off views of neighboring properties, including the property of my client, who would lose her view of the bay to the northeast from the rear of the property at 107 Plum. This is your first opportunity to consider the evidence that was introduced at the July 2021 hearing. So I want to take a couple of moments at the outset just to go over what the highlights of that evidence are. And then I'll take you through the requirements of Section 5089 of the zoning ordinance, which lays out what a variance applicant needs to establish. And I'll tell you why each of the first 4 or 5 requirements of that section of the code are not satisfied here. At the July 2021 hearing, Brian Weber, who's the architect on this project, was called as a witness. And he acknowledged that there are no topographical issues relating to this particular property, 824 to 828 West 2nd. There had been an allegation by the applicants that a physical hardship was created by crowding on neighboring properties and also by the narrow configuration, the supposedly narrow configuration of the subject property. But it's worth noting, and this is something to keep in the back of your mind because it relates to a number of the points that I'm going to raise. The subject property here at 824 to 828 is actually 2 side-by-side lots that probably as recently as 2005 each contained a single-family dwelling. So the property may be narrow, but it's not even too narrow to have 2 side-by-side single-family uses on it. What we're going to show you with some of the evidence that was introduced in July 2021 is that it's possible to build in a code-compliant manner on this property a 6-unit apartment building that would actually triple the historical intensity of the use. Phil Jesaway, again, the principal of the developer, was questioned at the July 2021 hearing, and we specifically asked him whether he was able to say that he could not, from an economic standpoint, build an apartment building of less than 9 units as they had proposed and have that be successful. He said that he had never run the numbers on that. So that's the evidence you have before you. And what that tells you is that there's no claim of an economic hardship. If there were an economic hardship, it would not by itself entitle the applicant to a variance. It would simply be one factor that you might consider, but it's not dispositive. But in any event, it's not at issue here because they're not able to establish any kind of economic hardship. Another key piece of evidence from the July 2021 hearing was the testimony of Patrick Cooper, who is an engineer with 39 years experience. He's with Gateway Engineers outside Pittsburgh, and he testified as an expert witness on behalf of Jan Ferguson, who's the objector. Mr. Cooper looked at the property, he looked at the zoning ordinance, and he came up with 3 concept plans, all of which would be code compliant, that could be built on this property. In other words, the structure would be not more than 12 feet from West 2nd Street. Parking would be to the rear, and the property would be accessed by an ingress driveway on the east side, 12 feet wide, and an egress driveway on the west side, right along the property lines, also 12 feet wide. If I can, I don't know if you can you see it from where you are? Can you see these plans from where you are? Should I bring them up a little bit closer? They're okay? I'm happy to bring them up. Come on, approach. I want to show you 2 of the plans that Pat Cooper came up with. This is Ferguson Exhibit 2, and it's the only difference between the 2 plans actually is the parking configuration in the rear of the property. This is Ferguson 2. It shows an ingress driveway here on the east side, an egress driveway on the west side. Here's the structure within 12 feet of West 2nd Street. It would be large enough to contain 6 apartments, not 9, but it would be a 3-story building, 2 apartments on each floor. In the rear, it shows 8 parking spaces with angled parking. Code requires 1 parking space per unit. So this would give you 2 more than would be required under code. And on the other side here, we have Ferguson Exhibit 3. Pretty much the same thing. The only difference is in the rear. You see, we have more conventional pull-in parking, 10 spaces. And there's adequate room to get in and out of there. So this works perfectly. And by the way, it's consistent with the development of the neighborhood in the sense that you have structures close to the street and garages or other parking to the rear of the property. And in fact, at the July 2021 hearing, Brian Weber acknowledged that that's the predominant development and use pattern in the West Bayfront area. So these 2 plans are both not only code compliant, but consistent with the development patterns. So let me take you, if I may, I'll try to be as brief as I can. I want to take you through the requirements in Section 5089 for a variance and show you how this application fails each one of those requirements. First requirement under subsection A of 5089 is that it's the classical hardship argument, and it requires that there be unique physical circumstances or conditions on the property itself, which makes it impossible to develop, in effect, in compliance with code. So what you know from the testimony of Mr. Weber is that there are no conditions on this property that create the problem. The crowding condition that they allege really is caused by conditions on other properties, and there are Pennsylvania cases decided by the Commonwealth Court, which have said that conditions on other properties are not dispositive. That does not prove a hardship based on physical conditions on a property. And by the way, sort of as an aside, if the concern really is crowding from the sides, what's the rationale for solving that by pushing a structure to the rear? We have solved any crowding problems that could possibly exist from the sides in our plans in Exhibits 2 and 3, because by putting the driveways on the sides, we've created ample room with the building in the center, and there is no crowding whatsoever. So that there's nothing out there that would support an allegation that this application satisfies 5089A, physical hardship on the property. Subsection B of 5089 says that because of the physical circumstances on the property, there is no possibility, and this is direct quote, no possibility that the property can be developed in strict conformity with the provisions of this ordinance, and that the authorization of a variance is therefore necessary to enable the reasonable use of the property. Well, we already know that that one has to fail because we've shown you 2 of the 3 plans that Pat Cooper devised, showing that very reasonable development is possible on this property, and there's no evidence in the record that suggests that a 6-unit building at the location we've shown is not a reasonable development of the property. And there are, by the way, there are a number of cases, probably since the Hertzberg case in the late 1980s, which related to dimensional variances. There have probably been more than 20 cases decided by the Commonwealth Court, which make that very point, which is that if you have a reasonable use of less intensity available on the property that is code compliant, you do not meet that requirement. And by the way, the requirements in your zoning code are very similar, almost identical to the requirements in the municipality's planning code. Under subsection C of 5089, the requirement there is that the unnecessary hardship has not been created by the applicant. There's actually law indicating that where an applicant insists on a development that is of greater intensity than one that would be fully code compliant, the applicant has in effect created his own hardship. And so this application would fail that test as well. And there are a number of cases that also suggest, and we've cited a number of them in the briefs that we submitted to the Commonwealth Court, and Mr. Martinucci is certainly aware of those cases. These cases show that when the variance is sought, essentially for profitability purposes, the hardship is self-inflicted. So you have a failure of the test in 5089C. In 5089D, the requirement is that the variance will not alter the essential character of the neighborhood or the district in which the property is located, nor substantially or permanently impair the appropriate use or development of adjacent property, nor be detrimental to the public welfare. Here you have pretty much an acknowledgement in Mr. Weber's testimony that the pattern in this neighborhood is to build close to the street with parking in the rear. And then you have the requirement in section 306.40 of the zoning code that to the extent, and this is pretty much a direct quote, to the extent feasible, bluff views shall be preserved. So here you have a situation where a developer is attempting to take views for his own development and deny those views or cut them off for neighboring property owners. So clearly you have a situation where this proposal not only deviates from the essential character of a historic West Bayfront neighborhood, but also interferes with the appropriate amenities of adjoining properties. So you have those first four requirements are not met. Subsection E of 5089 says that the variance has to be the minimum to afford relief. I think it's probably reasonable to assume that a 600% variance is not going to qualify as a minimum variance. So that's a fifth requirement that is not met. I know that this is always within your consideration when you look at one of these cases, but I just thought I should mention it anyway. Precedent is very important here. And if you grant a variance like this, you may well be besieged with requests by people in the West Bayfront to get similar types of outlandish relief so that they can build a property that satisfies their wishes contrary to the code. I hope you decide that that's not a direction in which you want to go. I think that would be detrimental to a neighborhood that you have deemed to be historic and worthy of preservation. And finally, there's this. At the, I think on the same evening in December of 2020, when this application was initially heard, the same developer submitted an application for a development at 946 West 2nd Street. And that was approved, and that development has been built out. It was an apartment building constructed there. And I just want to, I'll have to bring this up so I can show it to you. I want to show you what was built there so you can see what it is. So that rather institutional, I'll be kind and call it an institutional looking structure. It's I think it's a travesty, and it's not in keeping with what you want in a neighborhood like West Bayfront. So regardless of what the pretty pictures in the application for 824 to 828 West 2nd may tell you, there's a chance you're going to get something that's from this developer that's similar. So I hope that will be a factor in your consideration as well. And we appreciate your attention to this, and thanks for hearing us.
Thank you, sir.
Anybody have any questions, by the way, on any of this? Thank you.
Thank you. You can ask if there's anybody else who will speak on it.
Is there anyone else here to speak relative to this matter? Anyone to speak? Anyone to speak? Okay, we are going to take a brief executive session and be back. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for your patience. Jake?
We have a call for the vote. This is a call for the call for a vote to approve or deny the variance request. A yes vote is an approval of the variance, and no vote is a denial of the variance. Mr. Johnson, how do you vote?
No.
Mr. Dawson?
No.
Ms. King?
Abstention.
Mr. Sebald?
No.
Ms. Gunchen?
No.
We have a vote of 4 to deny and 1 abstention. The variance is denied.
Thank you. Seeing no other business on today's agenda, we will adjourn. Thank you for your time.